It's all going to zero against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
Who think if you're a single voter on crypto, that this could lose her the election if she doesn't come out and embrace it. Look, Trump was all for the not taxing tips. Now she's all for. Do you think she will ultimately embrace crypto as an industry?
I predict her verbiage will. And I do think that part of the reason why is you see Trump's speech at the Bitcoin conference. It's just a matter of competing for votes that she's going to adopt a thoughtful position. Now, speaking as an American, not from a partisan perspective, I think that's a good thing. I think we should want great debate in the marketplace of ideas. Even if she offers a thoughtful digital assets framework or policy, even if I don't agree with all of it, I think that'll be a good thing for the country. But what I challenge Kamala Harris to do is not just cite the pieties in the words. Go into detail. Say what you actually believe about self-custody of assets. Say what you actually believe about whether you think Gary Gensler should continue as the leader of the SEC. So I think those specifics are going to matter a lot, Kelly.
For sure, but is what you're saying is just a general position of openness is probably all the industry really is looking for. This idea that it's not a partisan issue, that Republicans are for it and Democrats are against it.
It should not be a partisan issue. Now, what I think you are seeing is this tendency to really embrace whatever wins her the most votes. But when you're looking at your question, Andrew, of how do you assess the seriousness of that, the metric to use is how specific she actually gets on those policy proposals.
Yeah, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. We're your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution, breaking news, culture, medic warfare. We will be your guide through the separation of money and state, starting with the cold opening. Once again, I mean, I think we coined the term not too long ago, Simply Bitcoin, tomorrow's Bitcoin news today. We've been covering this quite diligently, I might add, for the last 2 weeks or so. We've been essentially covering the kind of hot and cold treatment coming out of Kamala's campaign as it relates to Bitcoin. She sees that RFK and Trump are capitalizing on it. Trump's historic speech at the Bitcoin conference, Trump is dropping. He's referencing the Bitcoin industry in the live streams that he's doing. For example, the Aiden Ross live stream, historic numbers. It was beat by the Elon and Trump live stream or spaces. But, you know, he's doing these live streams and he's mentioning the industry in these live streams. And what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is we've kind of seen a reaction from the Democratic camp. We've seen this Twitter handle called Crypto for Harris. And they've organized Mark Cuban, Anthony Scaramucci, Ro Khanna, the Democratic House representative from California. They organize essentially kind of like these town halls where they get members of the kind of the staff of the White House and members of the executive branch to listen to industry executives. We were covering it last week. The last meeting went terrible. They asked the industry executives, do you feel like we are going after you guys? And basically every single person in the room raised their hands. Now, the good news is that there's going to be another town hall happening tomorrow. But the case that we've been making on Simply Bitcoin Live is I don't think they're being serious. Like, I think Vivek in the cold opening has a really good point. It's like they're signaling that they want to play nice with the industry. But if you pay attention to their actions, the same day that they held the town hall, the FDIC and the Fed actually sued one of the last remaining Bitcoin-friendly banks in the United States. So it's like, don't pay attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. And I think we found a smoking gun. There was a Cointelegraph article that dropped recently about 22 hours ago, and the headline is, Kamala Harris may continue the Biden administration's crypto crackdown. This is something that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. We've been theorizing it just based on not the speaking and the rhetoric that is coming out of the Kamala campaign, but the actions that are coming out of the executive branch. Because listen, she might be running for president, but right now she is the vice president. So she does have the authority to free Ross. I think it was David Bailey that said this on Simply Bitcoin IRL a couple days ago. But he said, like, look, if Kamala wanted to one-up Trump, all she had to do is show up to the conference with Ross Freed and bring him up on stage with her. Like, it would have taken away all of Trump's momentum from the like kind of like single issue Bitcoin voter. Now, the thing that I got to say is, why are we coming up with so many excuses and justifications for a party that for the last couple of years, and it's not monolithic, I want to be specific, has shown disdain for the industry? Elizabeth Warren wants to shut it down completely, and she wants to roll out a central bank digital currency. We have confirmation from Caitlin Long, who's trying to roll out a fully reserved Bitcoin crypto bank coming out of Wyoming. And when she came on Simply Bitcoin IRL, she told me specifically, these are her words, not mine, the reason that my bank was denied a federal banking charter was that order came directly from the White House. What I gotta say is, if you really want the Democratic Party to change tune as it relates to the industry, let them lose an election. There's no better feedback than losing an election. I think this whole placating and please begging and like, can you please, help us out? Like, that's the whole point of elections. The whole point of elections is the people kind of speak up and say, we're not very happy with the government. The opposite of what elections are going to do is like, let's vote in the people that have been metaphorically hitting our industry with the 2x4 for the last 2 years. And that's the reality. We've been covering this issue. We gave them the benefit of the doubt. But the moment that they locked up the Samurai Wallet guys for writing code, the Tornado Cash guys, the moment that they proposed a 30% income tax on Bitcoin miners in the US with the goal of just neutering the industry, you get to a point where you're like, okay, these people might not like me very much. And trying to kind of justify that and still trying to play ball with people that don't like your industry, they're not fans of your industry, I think is a bit naive. So today, we're going to explore some of the latest things that the current administration has done to signal that they're not pro-industry. Until they change course and actually show with actions, not with talk. I think talk is cheap. I think talk is being used as a form of manipulation. Until they do that, it's very simple. If you want the Bitcoin industry to thrive in the US, then you're looking at Trump and you're looking at RFK and you're like, those are probably the guys that I should vote for. It doesn't look like that coming out of the Biden-Harris administration. I'll be blunt. And we've tried to be very thorough and somewhat neutral with our reporting over the last couple weeks to months to years on this particular subject. And if you're still not convinced, I suggest watching back all those episodes because we've listed you all the actions they have taken to go up against the industry. And I think finally we found a smoking gun. And I think that's what we're going to cover today. All that being said, they're still hosting a town hall tomorrow. I'm not going to be tuning in, but it is open. So if you go to Nick Carter's Twitter, you can find the link and you could actually register for the town hall and you can kind of tune in to like the Zoom conference and whatnot. So we're going to cover that. Also as well, we are going to cover this amazing clip from Eric Cason. Eric Cason is one of my favorite Bitcoiners. He's been in the industry for quite a long time now. I think he was like one of the first original employees at Coinbase when they were starting. So yeah, I mean, he's been in here for a while. And he went on Peter McCormack's show, What Bitcoin Did, with American HODL. And he was talking essentially about how Bitcoin changes you. And that's something that I want to highlight to everybody. That's something that we played you a clip of Max Kaiser talking about that during the Alex Jones show yesterday. And the way that Kaiser framed it is, look, if a Bitcoin standard gets implemented here in the United States, what you'll see is you'll see peace and love coming out of people because there will be no other way to interact with people. fiat enables theft. Fiat enables efficient and effective wealth redistribution. If you remove that element, the only way to transact with someone is through a fair transaction, right? If you have unconfiscatable wealth where the monopoly on violence doesn't give you the ROI it gives you in the fiat system, then that, is kind of like it becomes kind of like a forcing function in a good way, right? So we're going to further explore that topic because that's one of the topics that is most difficult for people to wrap their head around, how Bitcoin fundamentally changes the human experience for the better. And I truly believe that if most of the world adopted a Bitcoin standard, I think the world would be a much more peaceful place and a place full of love and opportunity and peace and prosperity, and most importantly, hope. Anyways, I do want to bring up our co-host and our guest for today. We have Optimus Fields, who's definitely optimistic. And of course, our guest.
I was kind of laughing at you. Nico, you're sounding a little woo-woo, a little hippie-ish here. I love it.
I was quoting Kaiser, to be honest. I was quoting Kaiser, to be honest. I know. I don't think my head goes. I don't know if I'm from the peace and love era. I'm from the millennial. We got screwed over 2008 financial crisis area. I'm a little bit more militant.
I'm the reigning, West Coaster here. So that's usually the message that comes out of my mouth here. But hey, I love to see that it's catching on here a little bit. But I do want to kind of circle back a little bit to that Vivek piece that we saw in the beginning, because this is something Nico and I have been talking about on the show constantly. Okay, hold on. I guess my mic. Yep. All right. There's something we've been harping on the show constantly, is that Bitcoin isn't a bipartisan a partisan issue. Bitcoin is for anyone, and it is incredible that it's become politicized. And I love how Vivek communicate that message of look, no party should have their stranglehold on the Bitcoin industry. It literally is for anyone. And once they start to realize that message, I think it's going to really catch on both sides of the aisle, really on every side of the aisle. It's for anyone on planet Earth. But I also love the point that Vivek made, and we've been saying this constantly, and we've seen you guys and heard you guys in the chat where it's like, oh, their politicians are going to say anything to get a vote. And it's like, yeah, obviously that's how politics works. But like Vivek was saying, it needs to be much more than just words. And obviously all we're getting right now is words because of the campaigning, but we'll see if there's follow through. We'll see what they actually believe as we get closer to the elections. And I just love that someone like Vivek, love him. He's doing a great job. He's very eloquent in spreading that message and doesn't sound like, two quacks on YouTube. It's like, it seems like it has more power coming from Vivek when he's basically saying what we've been saying. And I was joking to myself, I'm like, man, it sounds like he's been listening to Nico and I on Simply Bitcoin, because he's saying the same things we're saying. Anyways, bringing in Carlos. Carlos, thanks for showing up today. I think, I know we had some scheduling issues to get you on the show, but I think today is the perfect time to be talking about this and the project you're working on. So, Carlos, how are you doing this morning? And for everyone out there that doesn't know the project you're working on, simpleproof.com, give us a 2-minute elevator pitch. What is Simple Proof and how are you doing today?
Thanks. Well, definitely feeling the love here, and didn't expect so much love on the pod, but I appreciate it, and glad to share some of our own. Carlos Torriello from Guatemala. For those that don't know, that's right in between El Salvador and Mexico. So next cul-de-sac over, if you just keep going south. And we were last year very involved in the election. And so as elections are coming up, we just had this experience of turning Guatemala into the first country in the world to protect its voting system with Bitcoin. And simpleproof.com exists to use the decentralized network to uphold information integrity and facilitate people finding the truth and differentiating from the lies.
And what's awesome too is that Bitcoin is truth. I guess what people have to understand, when you have a transparent blockchain that is audited by everyone, you can't really lie, right? Like when El Salvador made their reserves public, it's very difficult for a politician to skim some off the top, right? So, as much as central bankers and politicians project onto us, telling us that somehow Bitcoin is the private money and somehow the central bank money is the public money, even though anyone can create more Bitcoin if you invest in the infrastructure. Anyone could audit the chain. Could anyone audit the Fed? No. Could you make more dollars? No, you go to jail for that. What sounds more public and what sounds more private to you? So I think it's another case of central banker politician projection. And I think it's really cool, Carlos, that you have found essentially a way to utilize Bitcoin in order to, bring more transparency to elections in Guatemala.
It was a wild ride, but it's really the more I think about it, just the logical evolution. This isn't the first time that a monetary technology makes its way into democracy. If you think about it and you research it, it's the voting machines that are now used in the all over the world are actually dated to ATM machine manufacturers. So, and it's simple when you think about it, as voting systems are a consensus algorithm. It's how society reaches some decision, and votes are essentially just individual transactions, right? So we are very proud to have helped Guatemala do this and hope to bring it to the rest of the world.
Awesome. Well, dude, I'm really excited to hear more about it during the culture. Once again, Bitcoin is fixing things. It just fixes things left and right. Holy cow. And I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of what Bitcoin could do for the world. I think we're in the very first innings. But before we get to the show, I do want to give a very special shout out to our lead sponsor, Bitcoin Well. They make Simply Bitcoin possible. Of course, guys, this is the best place to buy your automatic self-custody. Buy real Bitcoin, enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. To get started, all you got to do is you put in your email address, and the process takes about 2 to 5 minutes, and boom, you're ready to buy automatic self-custody Bitcoin. That means when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. It doesn't give you even the option to leave it on the platform, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Bonus, every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you can redeem those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest for an opportunity to win up to 1 million sats. So we're going to toss a coin into the Wishing Well. Get your Lightning wallets ready. I think it crashed again. James.
Yo.
Oh my God, what is happening? Anyways, guys,
I'm going to yell at Canadian Opti.
Yeah, we're gonna get James, but it worked yesterday. We'll get it working for you guys tomorrow. But anyways, you guys get the gist of it. Head over to bitcoinwell.com today. Use promo code SimplyBTC for 3 tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well, and we'll get the competition working for you guys. We'll get the what's it called, the giveaway working for you guys.
There's too many people using the giveaway, apparently.
Is that what's happening? We'll get that working for you guys tomorrow. Anyways, head over to bitcoinwell.com today. Support self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramps. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. Lots to talk about.
The Bitcoin numbers.
All right, everybody. Guys, you want to store your generational wealth properly. Usually what comes with the hardware wallet by default is kind of like a piece of paper. You don't want to do that. You want to store your generational wealth properly. And the way that you do it is by literally proof of work, stamping your seed into a titanium plate. And that's exactly what the stamp seed is. It comes with a kit. It comes with like the letter stamps that you see on your screen right now. It comes with a hammer, and you literally hammer the letters in to a titanium plate. It is fireproof. It is waterproof. Unlike paper that could be eaten by your dog, it could be burnt in a fire. It can get all sogged up and like unreadable if it gets wet. You want to stamp your generational wealth into one of the strongest metals on planet Earth, titanium. Head over to stampseed.com today, and you can use promo code SIMPLY for 15% off. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $58,900. Sats per dollar, 1,698. Block height, 856,771. Blocks to halving, 193,229. having estimate March 26, 2028, total Lightning Network capacity 4,858 BTC, capacity value $286 million US dollars, realized monetary inflation 1.45%, the market capitalization of Bitcoin 1.16 trillion, Bitcoin versus gold market cap 6.83%. In the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin is just getting started. Anyways, this is breaking news, but if you've been tuning into Simply Bitcoin, tomorrow's Bitcoin news today, this should not have come as a surprise to you. Opti and I went hard in the paint, actually, on Wednesday of last week, and we made our case as to why we believed that the Biden and Harris administration would never adopt something like Bitcoin or be pro-Bitcoin. In my personal opinion, I do believe they're trying to create a monopoly for an eventual rollout of a central bank digital currency, which will continue the racket of fiat, which enables mass scale wealth redistribution via currency debasement. So the headline from Cointelegraph is Kamala Harris may continue the Biden administration's crypto crackdown. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, aims to maintain the Biden administration's stringent stance on cryptocurrency regulation. Harris is reportedly working with Brian Deese and Bharat Ramamuti, sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, two former economic advisors of the Biden administration who have heavily opposed the previous Clarity for Payment Stablecoins Act of 2023 for being too permissive for issuers. Harris' choice of economic advisors could signal her intention to continue the Biden administration's hostile crypto regulatory approach, according to Alex Thorne. We're going to check that on. We're going to check that right now because I think Alex Thorne did provide incredible kind of coverage. So what I also got to mention about this, guys, is when there's smoke, there's probably fire, right? We've been making the case. This isn't just a single data point for you guys. There's this, and then there's the lawsuit against the, one of the last remaining Bitcoin-only banks in the United States. The lawsuit essentially would force the bank to ask the Federal Reserve for permission every time it does business with an on-ramp, essentially centralizing it's basically saying like, okay, the Federal Reserve has the most to lose. Central banks have the most to lose if Bitcoin succeeds. We now have to ask the central bank for permission if we want to bank an on-ramp. Like it's clown world, right? And again, what I keep seeing from certain members of the community is like the amount of excuses that they come up with to justify, and it's like, no, they just don't understand. It's like, there's a very easy solution to this. The solution is to vote for the other guy that says, hey, if you vote for me, I'll protect the industry and I'll fire Gary Gensler. Like, it's such a simple solution. Like going and trying to placate and trying to like, please, like, we'll vote you in, but please treat us fairly. Like, obviously that isn't working. And just because they're taking a little bit of a backstep because they see the elections around the corner, what do you think they're going to do if they win? There is no feedback that's telling them that they should change course. In fact, they just got reelected in, which means that people approve of the job that they're doing as it relates to the Bitcoin and crypto industry. Anyways, so what am I talking about? Here's Caitlin Long. Caitlin Long is the founder and CEO of Custodia Bank, one of the first fully reserved Bitcoin and crypto banks coming out of Wyoming. She says, whoa, the DC Sieve told me about, sorry guys, I can't pronounce his name, Bot's involvement in the coordinated announcement / Custodia denial between the Fed and White House during an FOMC blackout period that stated Operation Choke Point 2.0 in January 23. If this threat is true, we have our answer on Harris / crypto. So let's get to some of the points. It is a pretty long thread. I'll try to read a lot of it. Here's Alex Thorne. Alex Thorne, by the way, we've had him on the show before. He's a head of research at Galaxy. And he says, new evidence that Kamala Harris will continue crypto crackdown. Her advisor choices suggest she will keep Biden's hostile attitude towards crypto. Harris is working with Brian Deese and Bharat, two key anti-crypto officials from Biden administration. We got some intel on the Harris campaign current posture on economic policy and who they're working with from Bloomberg Business. Deese and Ramamurthy are two key architects of the Biden admin's anti-crypto crusade, including Choke Point 2.0. Deese famously wrote a blog on the White House website, quote, "The administration's roadmap to mitigating cryptocurrency risks." The blog claimed to support innovation, but cast the whole of the crypto policy through a fraud and risk mitigation lens. Harris advisor Brian Deese' anti-crypto White House blog was published on January 27, 2023. That very same day, and remember, this is extremely symbolic, just how when they held the first town hall, that was the same day that the FDIC and the Federal Reserve sued Customers Bank. It's the same day. So symbolism is very important when it comes to these types of announcements. The fact that it's on the same day is not a coincidence. They're sending you an indirect message. So it goes on to say, the very same day that he published his blog, the Fed rejected Custodia Bank's membership and master account application. The Fed extended January 3rd, 2023 bank restrictions on crypto activities to all members. January 27th was a Friday, but when the Senate opened again on February 2nd, Senator Dick Durbin took the floor to lambast firms like Fidelity for working on crypto. Durbin also specifically praises the Fed for its denials of Custodia's application. And remember what happened with Elizabeth Warren when she found out that Fidelity was going to offer IRAs to their clients and offer services as it relates to Bitcoin and getting people more Bitcoin exposure. Literally, Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to Fidelity basically saying, Fidelity, you can't do that. Do we really want to live in a country where politicians are getting involved in the market? Because that's essentially what's happening here. White House blog, two key Fed denials, Fed guidance expanding its authority on crypto dramatically, an 11-minute floor speech from Senate banking it's hard to believe that the concurrent timing of these events were not coordinated. And given the National Economic Council's central role in forming White House economic policy, it's obvious that Deese was a central figure in the enactment of Choke Point 2.0, of which the actions above were central parts. But we don't have to infer. It's been widely reported. Now to Bharat. He worked under Deese at the National Economic Council and has extensive experience for working for, you know who? Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Senate's biggest crypto antagonist. He worked in her Senate office and led economic policy for her presidential campaign. Fortune described Bharat as the White House top crypto critic. It goes on to say, someone reported that it was Ramamurthy who intervened to block the stablecoin compromise between Patrick McHenry and Maxine Waters. By the way, Bharat later left the White House and was replaced on the NEC by John Dernberg, yet another former Warren aide. Based on Harris' advisor choices, I won't be surprised to hear shortly that he too will advise the Harris/Walz campaign. It goes on to say, in April, Rights confirmed Leto's reporting saying that it was specifically Deese and Ramamurthy who intervened to kill the stablecoin legislation. Keep in mind that this bill would have legalized but heavily regulated stablecoins, both with oversight and prudent powers. Regardless of what you think of such a bill, it would undoubtedly have brought stables from the cold and added significant consumer safety. Okay. So it continues. Guys, go check out Alex Thorin's Twitter account for the full thread. But the general gist of this is very simple. What does Elizabeth Warren want? We've played you guys the video before. Elizabeth Warren wants a central bank digital currency. You cannot have a central, we say this all the time, Bitcoin or slavery. What does that mean? You have Bitcoin or you have the continuation of fiat. What is the continuation of fiat? Take a look at China. It's a central bank digital currency. That's what they want. They can't have competition. If people have a choice between something that is deflationary and censorship resistant and something that is inflationary and prone to censorship, people are obviously going to choose the better option. So what do? They try to create an environment where there's a central bank digital currency monopoly. That's what's happening. That's what's going on. And the fact that these two aides are going to be part of the Harris administration, and they both worked under Elizabeth Warren, should tell you everything you need to know. Okay, you could say, Nico, this is not enough information. Connect the dots with the other things that have been happening over the last couple of weeks. Up until what point can we say enough with excuses? It's time for action. I think it's been way too. We've spent way too much time trying to make excuses for someone that has continued to show, even though they might not say it because it's not politically popular to say it, they continue to show that they don't like the industry. Don't pay attention to what they say, pay attention to their actions. And I'm telling you what, guys, you're going to continue to see more and more signs as time goes by that they don't like the industry. And something that Trump said in his speech at Bitcoin Nashville, and of course, he's trying to get elected. Of course, he's trying to get votes. But one of the things that Trump has said was, if Harris and Walz get elected, they're going to go after the industry 10 times harder. And is that too much of a stretch to say that? Look at what they're doing. She's setting herself up with people that have shown you in the past and that have worked for Bitcoin's arch enemy in the Senate, and then you expect different results. What is the definition of insane? Trying the same thing and expecting different results? I think it's enough time to stop. I think it's been enough time, and we've given them enough benefit of the doubt to get to a point where you're like, okay, yeah, listen, you might change your mind, but right now it's like a wolves. It's like, it's like they're hiding, but behind the outfit, behind the costume, there's a wolf, right? That's literally what's happening. So, I don't care how many Crypto for Harris Twitter things come out. I don't care that they're holding a town hall tomorrow. Enough talk, show me action, and then I'll change my mind. Until then, I'm seeing Trump and I'm seeing RFK. They have pro-Bitcoin stances. They're literally telling you they're fire Gary Gensler. They're literally telling you we're going to make sure the industry moons. And then you have the other people that are telling you, we kind of like it. But at the end of the day, they're doing everything in their power to try to sabotage it. Like, I think enough is enough. I think, you can't make any more excuses. And I know that's very unpopular to certain people because they feel that Trump is a divisive figure, and you can make a really good argument that he is. But that's why you have RFK, right? But, I can't make any more excuses anymore, Opti. Like, I know this isn't exactly a smoking gun, but this is like seeing a picture of a smoking gun. This is like as if, they used a gun and they left the room, so you didn't see them using the gun, but you see their back exiting the door and then the gun on the floor still smoking. So it's not exactly them seeing them shooting the gun, metaphorically, but you have a pretty good idea that they shot the gun, right? So I'm pretty much convinced at this point. We went in depth as to why we believe this is happening on last Wednesday's episode. At this point, convince me otherwise, Kamala. I'm all ears. Please show me that I'm wrong. Anyways, Opti, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I think everyone knows my take, and Nico had to pull me back. If you're a loyal listener of the show, the infamous Opti Gate, where I went hard and Nico tried to give the Democrat Party the benefit of the doubt. We obviously don't want to make Bitcoin a partisan issue. It's not just for one party here; it's for everyone. And of course, with the caveat that neither party is a monolith. There are, dissenting voices on a lot of different policy issues and topics here. So I'm not here to just like completely paint all of Democrats as anti-Bitcoin, but it is becoming very clear, if you are taking the emotion aside, it's very clear that the Biden or the Harris administration has been anti-Bitcoin. They've been fighting us for the last 4 years. It's most likely going to be more of the same, as much as, Harris is trying to do this crypto for Harris campaign and the town hall and try to garner votes and basically like, look, guys, we love you. We want to get you in the fold. It just kind of goes back to the meme that we've been seeing on Twitter the last couple of weeks. It's like, do people, or rather, does Harris forget that she is the VP right now? And if she was actively trying to benefit the Bitcoin industry, that they can do things today that would help the industry. And we don't have to wait to vote her in to change things. Like, they're already in power. So to me, it just seems like a lot of rhetoric and a lot of, things that we just want to hear to basically get votes. But it kind of goes back to what we were saying with Vivek in the beginning. It's like, look, enough talk already. Like, put up or shut up. And with, I would say this is a smoking gun, Nico. Like, with this kind of angle here of them getting more people that have been actively anti-Bitcoin with their history and their track record of like fighting the industry, I don't think that there is any room to debate whether they're going to actually help the Bitcoin industry improve or whether they're going to continue to be anti-Bitcoin. I think this is pretty clear that if you're, adding anti-crypto people or anti-crypto track records to your administration, what do you think they're going to do? You think they're going to flip and be like, no, we love Bitcoin now? It's like, no, we know they're probably going to do more of the same. And so you can't, you can't change the spots. And so this is where we are right now. Like, as a Bitcoin show, obviously we try to avoid the political angles and the policies and everything. And it's really about their takes on Bitcoin. But it's becoming very clear that the Biden or Harris administration, the ruling elites in the Democrat Party do not want you to use Bitcoin. And I think as a Bitcoiner, that's something that you shouldn't just like dig and be like, oh no, that's not a big deal. It's like, this is going to hurt our industry. This is going to hurt individuals in America. This is going to hurt Bitcoin adoption globally, because America usually sets the standard for the rest of the world.
100%. Well, another thing that I'll say before I pass it on to Carlos is like, the way that David Bailey put it on the Monday show was essentially like, essentially the Democratic Party has been hijacked in a way, right? They're not properly representing their constituents. And, Bitcoin has a tendency of exposing incentives. And this is what's happening right now, is incentives are being exposed. Carlos, what are your thoughts on this, man? Obviously you've been focusing on Guatemala and the elections over there, but I'm sure you're paying attention to what's happening in the US, because any type of Bitcoin entrepreneur or Bitcoin business or developer, you definitely have an eye open to the regulatory situation in the United States.
My point is, free Ross, pardon Assange, pardon Snowden, and day one and day one promises are harder to keep than what you could be doing today if you already have the means to do so. And that, if certain people are still deprived of their liberty for doing what most of us take for granted every day.
100%. Beautifully said, right? It's as simple as that. Free Ross. You can do it right now. You can do it right now. All you got to do, prove me wrong. I want to eat my words. Prove me wrong right now. Free Ross. That's all you got to do. I will wear a Kamala hat on the show the next day. Anyways, go ahead, Carlos.
And even better, give him back his corn.
Exactly. Free Ross and give him back his corn. All right, everybody, before we move on to the next segment, I just want to tell everybody there's about 1,200 of you guys watching live between YouTube, Rumble, and X. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, you know what to do. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we're providing you value. And stay tuned. We still have a lot of content for you guys. Let's hit the news.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more. All right, everybody, listen, we talk about revolution, we talk about changing the world. The way that we do that is enough of us take self-custody. One of the best ways to take self-custody, the one that we recommend, is by obviously getting yourself a hardware wallet. We recommend our sponsor, Passport by Foundation Devices. It's a Bitcoin only, open source hardware wallet. It's incredibly easy to use. You can pair it up with the Envoy app. It makes spending cold storage Bitcoin easy. And also they have a concierge service. So if you've never used a hardware wallet before, they will literally walk you through it. You can use promo code SIMPLY to get yourself a discount to a Passport by Foundation Devices hardware wallet. Remember, guys, not your keys, not your cheese. Before I do this clip of Eric Cason on what Bitcoin did, I just want to mention a couple things. You don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. A deflationary life, something that you can't even comprehend what that means unless you've been living on a Bitcoin standard. But that's just a very fancy way of saying your life and your expenses will get progressively cheaper over time. That's right. That is real. That can be achievable. All you got to do is switch to a Bitcoin standard, which is insane, right? Because we're so used to living in this world where things get progressively more expensive over time. This is not your fault. It's not because you're not working hard enough. It's not because you didn't get a certain degree. As Jeff Booth has said many, many times, technology makes it so that the world should naturally be deflationary. Goods and services, as productivity goes higher, should get cheaper over time. But central bank policy and government policy make that the inverse, right? Through currency debasement, through all of these things, it actually makes life more expensive over time, right? But the good news is that now individuals have a tool to achieve a deflationary life. And that tool is Bitcoin. Earn Bitcoin, mine Bitcoin, save in Bitcoin, put it in self-custody, and all of a sudden, you not only get wealthier, but everything around you gets cheaper as time progresses. Isn't that crazy? Anyways, last point. Most of the world still lives on a fiat mindset. What does that mean? That means that they don't even have time to breathe. They don't even have time to think. They don't even have time to understand the basics, right? They don't get it. They can't comprehend that, there is an existence where, things get cheaper. So we're gonna kind of go through essentially the hierarchy of needs. First, at the top is self-actualization, esteem, belonging, social connection, safety. How's that say? How do you say it, Opti?
Psychological.
There's no C, so I'm like, okay,
Physiological.
Was it physiological? Oh, physiological.
Exactly.
Body.
So it's your body, right? It's food, sleep, like the basics, right? So the problem is that most people, and we'll go on to this next one, right? Most people are right here in the safety, and they're like getting by day to day. Most Americans are living paycheck. This is most Americans, the wealthiest country on planet Earth, are living paycheck to paycheck, right? So moving on to the next one, the hierarchy of financial needs. So at the top, we have legacy. That sounds familiar to Bitcoiners, doesn't it? We have financial freedom. We have accumulating wealth. We have financial safety. We have cash flow and basic needs. Most people on planet Earth are right here. Financial safety, cash flow. I would even say most people are cash flow and basic needs. Most people are here, right? Here's a very cool statistic. Only 29% of Americans over 50 feel very prepared for retirement. This isn't your fault. This is because the system is inherently corrupted, it is inherently broken. What Bitcoiners are saying, this is why I referenced the Max Kaiser thing with love and peace and all these things, is that most people live in this existence. And because they live in this existence of just cash flow and basic needs, they're not able to achieve this. They're not able to achieve a higher level of experiencing the human condition, of belonging, social connection, of esteem, of self-actualization. Because until you get to these levels, you can't even think of your legacy. You can't even think of financial freedom. You can't even think of accumulating wealth because you're too busy spending the majority of your time and the stress that comes with it focusing on food, housing, transportation, and daily expenses. Look at this statistic. Just 47% of adults would have enough savings to cover 3 months of expenses. You know how sad that is? And this is something that Bitcoin fixes. We've shown you guys this website many, many times. Life gets progressively cheaper on a Bitcoin standard. The dollar's 80% cheaper on a 5-year time scale. Oil, 91% cheaper. Gold, 91% cheaper. S&P 500, 64% cheaper. Most important thing here, I think, to most people, housing, 85.36% cheaper. Even with housing doubling, things have gotten cheaper. Now, the cost of food, everything is getting cheaper if you wait long enough. Even with eggs up 97% on a 3-year time scale. On a 5-year time scale, eggs are 82% cheaper. So everything gets cheaper. And when everything gets cheaper, it allows you to start thinking about the future. Start thinking about the legacy that you'll leave behind. Start thinking about financial freedom. In the Middle Ages, they used to construct these enormous cathedrals that would take 800 years to build, meaning the first person that started building that, they knew that they were never going to see that completed. We don't do that anymore. We live for the short term, and that has seeped into society where people are just looking for that short-term high to escape the suffering of just making ends meet and the day-to-day. All right, all that being said, I had to preface Eric Cason's bit on what Bitcoin did because it's absolutely epic. And it talks about exactly what I just said in a super Eric Cason type of way. Let's check it out.
Made with him was like pretty much like, he was like, look, like if you do this and it fails, kill yourself. You have every right to do it. If you do this and it works, you belong to me. It's like, all right, sounds like a pretty fair deal. Reverse Faustian thing going on, right? Mm-hmm. Turns out it worked. You know, and not only did it work, but in it working, it forced me to go, why the fuck is this thing working? Why is magic internet money so important that it can do this function that nothing else on the planet can do? Which like God didn't really tell me at the time, but he put this like hook in my brain. So like I had to try to understand it. Because like this thing liberated me from this shitty and horrific existence of me hating myself to actually being free to be and do and behave however I wanted to. So I really needed to understand it. And as I dug deeper and deeper and deeper, I found myself in deeper and deeper and deeper philosophical territory, you know, first starting with Austrian economics, then going into legal theory, then going into actual deep continental philosophy. And it turns out that this actually is the most important issue in humanity. And it's not because it normalizes money. It's not because it normalizes law. It's because it actually normalizes philosophy itself. And like it comes down to the very bottom about the nature of what truth is and how we functionally come to that understanding and how historically and dynamically when we've tried to do that, this substrate of language has always failed us. And now we get to speak and exchange with each other in terms of in my opinion, something that's transcendental to that. Like we're dealing with mathematical algorithms and with things that will never be repeated for all of human history. Like, it's pretty fucking wild when you think about the fact that every single transaction hash is unique in and of itself and will never be repeated for all of human existence, no matter what. What does it mean that we now have a language that instead of speaking in words, we're speaking in naming? I'd spoke to you about this before, about the idea we now have a grammar without language, but names. And this creates an extremely powerful function because no longer are we trying to get back to that normalization of like what we're trying to talk about, but we just go into the mathematical proofs of what.
All right. Eric Cason does have a way with words, and I just want to emphasize the very beginning. YouTube, that was metaphorical, and nor do we advocate for any type of self-harm. But yes, Eric has a way of kind of tapping into essentially what is happening here. It's more than money. It's almost as if we've discovered a new language that can't be corrupted, and money is a form of language. And if that language is corrupted, it has a way of affecting other facets of society. And we have now found perfect money that is going to allow a society to be built on top of that. Therefore, no longer is the base layer corrupted. No longer is something siphoning off your energy and redistributing it back to the government, back to the state, or back to whoever. You're now able to keep your energy, keep your work to yourself, and that completely changes the organization of society and honestly your experience in the human condition radically. And that is something that people don't quite understand when they get into Bitcoin, because most people, when they get into Bitcoin, they want to get really rich, and you will eventually. You just got to pay your dues and hold on for dear life for at least a couple cycles, and then you'll be wealthier relatively to where you started, right? So, it's something really interesting, and it's something that's not being talked about, because I think the majority of the conversation is always about price. It's always about ETFs. It's, lately on Simply, because it's an election year, it's been about Kamala and Trump and all that. But what we just showed you guys, and people are asking in the chat, what did I show you? It's called the hierarchy of needs. And if you want a different version of it, put hierarchy of needs, finance, and it will show you those two kind of pyramids. But yes, that's essentially, you got to find out where you are in that hierarchy of needs. And the awesome part is that, no, I didn't do the Illuminati sign, everybody. Okay. Wow. I'm just trying to show you. But you want to get to the top, because once you are able to make ends meet, once you're not just treading water, then you're going to be able to reach another level of consciousness and start thinking about the future. And that's what living on a Bitcoin standard will enable you to do. Now, the reason we talk about Kamala and all that stuff is when they're against Bitcoin, they're against you getting out of that. They want you to stay in the day-to-day, just existing, just trying to make ends meet. Because anyone that is trying to propagate fiat and trying to extend its existence, that's what they're advocating for. They're advocating for human suffering. What Bitcoiners are advocating for is human prosperity through self-dependence, through responsibility, and through proof of work. And Bitcoin is going to allow you to live that life that you want to live. It's not easy. It's not a shortcut. It takes a couple cycles, but it's a literal cheat code to life. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. Anyways, my rant is over. I do want to pass it on to Carlos. We went down the philosophical route. I wanted to make Opti proud, because Opti's a philosophical type of guy. So we went down that route.
well,
we
before
have
we
to
pass
show
it-
everyone why we're fighting. What are we fighting for, bro, in this revolution?
Before we pass it to Carlos, I just want to say that I have been likened to being an 80 IQ version of Eric Cason. He is my spirit animal. So yeah, and I'm surprised so many people in the chat don't even know who Eric Cason is. But let's pass it to Carlos, and then I'll chime in.
Right on, folks. Well, I do agree with what Eric is saying, that Bitcoin is truth. And I think that that message is more important than ever because the money argument is very important. And there are many people struggling that don't understand that Bitcoin is the escape hatch. And the sooner you get on it, then the better your life will be. But money is so important to people that it's instinctive that we have a visceral reaction against someone trying to pitch us on this silver bullet that's going to make all our problems go away. And so I'm not surprised that it's very hard to get normal folk to consider this because they're deep philosophical and hard questions. But on the truth side of things, there's a lot of work that we can do, and that's basically the what we did in Guatemala is understanding that there is an opportunity to reach new people with a different message that could, we believe, resonate with them so that they can take a second look at Bitcoin.
For sure. 100%. I also want to give a shout out to the super chat. Winston Alexander, thank you for the $10. Also appreciate the $2 earlier. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Winston says, love the Nico rant. Speaking of guns, Carlinho, when are you in NYC area for a Bitcoiner range day?
Hopefully soon. And if you are in NYC, you should definitely check out Winston and go shooting. He taught me how to do it, and apparently I'm okay at it thanks to him.
Go shooting out of range legally.
Yes. Learn to protect yourself, because if truth doesn't protect you, then maybe you're gonna need firepower.
Long live the Second Amendment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're huge 2A maxis here.
Opti, what's your take on that, bro? This is up your alley. I know we're kind of short on time. So
I'll keep it. I'll keep
you
it
got
short.
4 minutes, bro.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Again, absolutely love Eric Cason. Go check out his work. I think he's one of my favorite Bitcoin philosophers. One of my favorite Bitcoin content creators.
And Nico's philosophical rant.
And yeah, well, Nika, you did a little mid, but you did a good job. Anyways, just hitting on what he was saying. This is by far the thing that gets me the most excited about Bitcoin, is because I've experienced exactly what Cason has said in my own life. If you guys know my story a little bit, and for new people, like, I got a degree in philosophy as well. And the only reason I fell down that path into philosophy is because I just wanted to answer the simple questions of, like, what is life? What's the point of meaning? And why are we here? To only end up with more questions, until I found Bitcoin. And I realized that there's something about the Bitcoin protocol. There's something about the proof of work ethos. There's something about hard money that once you really wrap your mind around it, you start to realize that it does kind of eliminate a lot of the noise in the world, and it brings you back down to reality, and you get down to the brass tacks, and you have to actually, align yourself with truth, as we like to say all the time, to prosper. And I think that the world is fun, or actually Nico says this all the time, we fundamentally believe that the universe is created in such a way that, like, you do get what you want out of life if you are aligning with truth and you are putting in the work. Like, life rewards you if you are thinking correctly. And there's something about Bitcoin that once you align yourself, once you understand Bitcoin to a certain extent, like I would argue everyone that hangs out with us constantly, like, your life does improve. And people forget that money is psychological. Like, there is a psychological relationship between money and how you feel personally. Like, you are much happier when you don't have to think about survival. Like, you can start to think about things that are more fulfilling. And I've experienced this in my own life. Again, telling my story, I've said this multiple times, but before Bitcoin, I could barely save any money. And I literally had to, like, hit my personal rock bottom to look for answers. And this is why I'm always saying that, like, humans are very particular beings, and, like, our brains are wired in such a way that you pretty much only chase pleasure or you avoid pain. But most people need to feel that pain to start to seek out solutions to their problems. And so we're at this point right now in humanity where people are realizing that there's something wrong, whether it's the media lying to us, whether it's the broken money, whether, you know, it's bad diets. Like, people are starting to realize like there is something wrong inherently with what we've been taught, and we have to seek alternative solutions because we're just constantly being fed lies. And once you align yourself with Bitcoin, once you really study Bitcoin, it gives you a new lens and you look at the world completely different, and you start to take action. Your life gets better. And this is why we constantly talk about this like psychological principle of Bitcoin and money and this whole movement that we are a part of, because it will make your life better. And this is what I think most people we need to harp on. And by we, I mean everyone in the chat. It's like Bitcoin makes your life better. And that's what everyone is searching for. They just want to live a better life. Like, you can hit them with all the facts and, you know, the central banks, fractional reserve banking and how they're stealing from you, inflation stuff, like all the memes we constantly hit on. But fundamentally, people just want to live a better life, and showing people how Bitcoin gives them a better life, I think, is a very powerful message. And again, just like absolutely love Eric Cason when he gets philosophical, because like that's right up my alley. I love cosmic Bitcoin takes. And this is like the phenomenon that's really hard to kind of talk about with people that haven't experienced it themselves. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, how did internet nerd money change your life? And then you lay it down and lay it out for them. And if you are a Bitcoiner with us today, I'm sure you can drop in the chat a bunch of different examples of how Bitcoin has changed your life. And it's really more of how you interact with the world and how you view the world that has fundamentally changed your life. And this is a psychological... Oh yeah, the beep. All right. Oh, I get it. I was like, what is that? This is a psychological movement. Money is psychological, and it's a people movement. It's about your relationship with reality. Okay. All right, everybody, let's get to the culture. I'm excited to talk to Carlos about simple proof. All right, here we go, everybody.
The Daily Culture.
Damn, bro, I just discovered that beep.
Dude, that's a very mid beep. We need like a real beep here. we need like an aggressive beep here.
Anyways, all right, guys, I do want to tell you about our sponsor, of course, the Orange Pill app. The Orange Pill app is the Bitcoin social layer. Stack friends who stack sats join the 11,822 Bitcoiners that are currently on the app. To download it, you scan the QR code or check the link in the video description. The Orange Pill app is the #1 resource for Bitcoin-only events. Also, if you're in a new city, you're traveling for a conference, and you don't know any Bitcoiners around you, that's what the Orange Pill app is for. It allows you to see the Bitcoiners around you and send them a DM and connect with them. So download the Orange Pill app. So one of the best ways to reach me as well. So if you want to get in contact with me, one of the best ways is the Orange Pill app. I don't really answer Twitter DMs or emails these days. Carlos could be the first one to tell you that. So he should have contacted me via the Orange Pill app. Anyways, I get flooded. It's just way too much. It's like a lot. Anyways, but now Carlos is connected with me via Orange Pill app, so he can reach me directly, I think. Anyways,
yeah.
Carlos has been working on simple proof. Guys, this is historic what he's been able to achieve and be able to do. They essentially, this was used for the election in Guatemala successfully. And it's crazy how many applications there are for Bitcoin, whether it's heating green rooms, and using that excess heat, or whether it's, ensuring, it's a very tricky word these days, the integrity of an election using a public Bitcoin ledger. So yeah, Carlos.
Okay, cool.
Carlos, what is simple proof for anybody, watching in the audience? How do you even come up with this idea? I've been hearing you talk about it for so long, but one thing is hearing you talk about it, and another thing is you actually pulling it off. So kudos to you, man. Very, very cool.
Appreciate it. Well, simpleproof.com, we exist to uphold information integrity. Basically, we want to build a world where, we're convinced that the state and the government will continue to issue the records. I can't imagine a world where the public records are issued by citizens or a decentralized network. But so public records, if we can't take the state's ability away to issue them, at least what we can explore is to eliminate the possibility that anyone, whether it be the government or any bad actors, can change the record. And so we are trying to build that world where starting with democracy and specifically voting, and you can consider the voting record as the most important public registry of a democracy because it establishes the peaceful transition of power. And so if we can't keep that record secure, then we're in trouble. And in Guatemala, we were in trouble. It's been a long time coming. I've worked as a volunteer in the system since 2011, 15. We had craziness happen in 2019 where they were changing the results on us. And so the Simple Proof team, I mean, there's a bunch of us, they took basically the open timestamps protocol, and I'll show that one next. And if people don't know, basically, when you hear what I'm saying and maybe you cringe and you think this sounds like JPEGs on Bitcoin or putting my vote on Bitcoin, that is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the Open Timestamps protocol. You can go to opentimestamps.org. It's been around since 2016. You literally just go to opentimestamps.org, go to this part that says stamp and verify, throw in any piece of data, and for free, they'll just timestamp it to Bitcoin so that if you have anything that could be used as evidence in court, Open timestamps have been protecting Bitcoiners since 2016 for free. And so what we built at Simple Proof is essentially a government scale business to business solution where you can do this now at scale with essentially all documents that are produced by all the governments worldwide so that they can't change them once they are issued.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, before we move on, because Carlos, I know you have some other examples of the work you've been doing. Can you unpack this? What upholding information integrity means? Like, I know you just covered it, but like for people that don't know the nomenclature that you're using, the wording, what exactly does that mean? Sure. And you can go to our film called Immutable Democracy. It's free on YouTube to watch a little bit about this. But basically, open timestamps and what it does is you use the op return function of a transaction. Think of that as kind of like a memo space on a check. And we include a SHA-256 into that memo and anchor through a series of Merkle trees to one single transaction, any amount of data, using Bitcoin as effectively a clock. And so Satoshi famously never referred to it as a blockchain, but rather a time chain. And more recently, in the Craig Wright case, we actually found out that when considering whether Bitcoin was useful for anything other than money, the only thing that Satoshi could come up with was timestamping. And so it's effectively just carbon dating digital information. What's the point of carbon dating digital information? Well, bad guys don't have time machines. You can't go back in time and change something. Right. So if you have a record, for example, on election night, produce certain documents, if you get those to actually get confirmed on Bitcoin, then you can prove that a certain piece of data is actually from there. So let me show you an example where anyone can do this. It's the Guatemalan election night reporting system for the national elections in 2023. You can click either of these buttons when you go to trep.gt. And basically what we're showing here is the national results. And that's the map if you haven't seen that. Down here, we have totals upwards of hundreds of thousands of votes. And so in our case in Guatemala, we can then, don't trust verify, drill down and put any number between 1 and 24,500. So can you give me a random number between 1 and 24,500?
23,000.
23,000. There you go. So I just put a button like that. A number like that, I click in, and so now I'm honing in on a specific table that represents about 400 votes in Guatemala. The way we vote is we're assigned to voting tables, and each voting table acts kind of like a coin join. It's the other cool thing about democracy is that it helps us emphasize the importance of privacy tools. So all of this data is public thanks to privacy tools that are very similar to coin joins. Again, it's a database. How do I trust it? I go down here to this blue button that says Ver. When I click that, it's showing me now this JPEG, which it's hard to see there, but we're looking at table number 23,000. It was signed by Milton, Luis, and Carla, and they're saying that 236 votes were distributed this way, and then they signed it along with 6 different citizens that were there representing political parties, so that in Guatemala, we fight for the votes at the table, and that's it. Like, you have parties have to distribute over 100,000 people across the nation to defend their vote, so that we avoid having months of legal battles. But then it's protected by a paper. Analog is very safe, but the problem is when the paper gets scanned, it's get posted on the internet. So how do we know that this JPEG that I'm showing you is actually from election night? And so Simple Proof convinced the authorities to add this very orange button. I wonder why so orange. If Nico can read what it says, it translates for the audience.
So it basically the English translation is verify hash.
And so now we have left the National Election Authority's database and are now on the immutable backup service that Simple Proof built. And so all that Simple Proof does is say, this JPEG appeared on our database on June 26 at 1:18 in the AM. The time zone for Guatemala is GMT -6. And then we obtained a SHA-256, which is a unique code. And so kind of like what Eric was saying about names, we are naming this JPEG uniquely. And then we have this timestamp that is from the blockchain. And again, why so orange? The timestamp is from 1:41 a.m. on the same day, so about 23 minutes after being received on our database. You can download the original file to check all this data yourself. But then more importantly, we provide what we call the Open Timestamps Navigator. And so what we're showing now is literally how this unique identifier, the SHA-256, which you can think of it like the genetic code of this JPEG, has this SHA-256, and you can find it at the bottom of this tree. And we provide all the cryptographic proof to follow this path up through the tree that connects through all these cryptographic proofs, mathematics as language. And then at the Merkle root, you have another SHA-256, which is here, but the Merkle root has a transaction ID. That means that anyone that is running a Bitcoin node can use this transaction ID to confirm whether or not what we're saying is true or not. We provide a helpful link to mempool.space. So if you don't have access to your node, you can just rely on the Wiz's node. So shout out to the mempool guys. And so as you can see, this is what the data that's public on Bitcoin saying this file exists, this hash, which is unique in the universe, exists as of June 26 at 1:26 in the AM, which means that we can confirm, as long as we have the mathematical proofs to back this up, that SHA existed on that transaction back over a year ago. All this to mean that we can now use Bitcoin as an anchor of truth, so that digital information can be confirmed to have existed prior. And this is game-changing for elections, because it means that now you force attackers to attack elections on election night, because if they do it afterwards, I mean, it's very clear. And so it's not perfect. We're not saying that it's a silver bullet, but you basically reduce 99% of the attack surface to a single moment in time, which is the beginning. And when you do that, basically you can point all your defense systems to prepare for yourself, and make it harder for folks. And so, yeah, that's what we did.
Well,
this is a danger to democracy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we are not conspiracy theorists here. Voting works exactly as designed. We are not insinuating that there is manipulation.
This system is definitely a danger to democracy.
But I do want to ask, because I know you do have one more example, and we were talking about this earlier about the elections in Venezuela.
Immutable record keeping, exactly, danger to democracy, 1,000,000%.
Looking at what happened in Venezuela, and you were talking about this off air, what is the potential use case of this? Again, we're not conspiracy theories here, and voting works exactly as designed, and there's no voting manipulation ever. Voting works. Go out and vote. Carlos, let's bring this back down to reality here. We just had an election in Venezuela, and could they have used simple proof?
See, what Opti is saying, right? He's strengthening democracy.
Yes,
right?
Huge fan of democracy.
It's a perfect voting system.
So Bitcoin now protects Guatemalan democracy. So if you're against Bitcoin, you're against Guatemalan democracy. And so what I showed you again on the screen now is the Guatemalan elections.
Carlos is a right-wing extremist.
Is the official election results webpage for the Guatemalan election system. Now we can compare that to the unofficial opposition election results from Venezuela, which you can go to resultadosconvzla.com.
Oh, we can talk about this because the U.S. government's official stance is that the Venezuelan election wasn't great. So
voting works.
Yeah,
and
no, not
is...
in Venezuela officially. It didn't work there.
And so in this case, this is the opposition database. So this is literally not what the state is saying happened. But basically, you can drill down by clicking these buttons and go all the way down to a voting table in Venezuela. And you can find, and I keep clicking on these buttons, they just keep getting deeper and deeper. But eventually you get to this point where you can click on this green button and you're shown another JPEG, which is the opposition of Venezuela claiming that this is the actual machine readout that was spit out at that voting table containing the election results. And so this is fantastic. Props to them for doing this. Having gone through them, it seems like they're missing quite a bit. And obviously, if you're doing this in opposition to a ruling regime, it's going to be tricky to get all the data. So they don't have all the data like we do in the Guatemalan case because it's the official record. But the other thing is we don't have a timestamp for these JPEGs. So inevitably, what's happened is that they do have. If you zoom in here, you can see there is a hash here. And so the machine actually included a hash when it was printed out. So the opposition is saying you can use this hash to make sure that even if the paper record disappears, no one can reproduce this hash unless it's confirmed. But it's still, there are issues. If we had a similar system where right here on top of the green button there'd be an orange button that would take you to a similar system like this, it just bolsters the case that the Venezuelan opposition has access to the official files, or at the very least, the files that are from election night. What that would mean,
that's a danger to democracy.
What that would mean is if the regime wants to contradict this opposition, report, they would have to then show their own files with timestamps that predate the timestamps that are being produced here. So if we ever get into a he said, she said situation, it's no longer about opinions, it's about mathematics. And as Eric Cason said, where if we uphold information integrity, then those words, those names, those unique names, these SHA-256s correspond to these documents, but not only correspond to them individually in some moment, it's you can track them and say they are unique to a certain moment in time. And that's the other deep thing that Eric was saying there, is that when you realize this, it means that everything you do on Bitcoin and everything that we do in the digital world, if we were using Bitcoin efficiently, as open timestamps suggest, everything that in our digital lives will live forever. And forever, people will have the ability to retrace and see what we were up to. So, the sooner you learn about this, the sooner your legacy will live forever. And what better place to start than the transfer of power?
100%. And I've done that. Like, I've put a message on the Bitcoin about my wedding day, the day and time that my daughter was born. I put that in a block, and that's gonna live forever. And that file, that OP return text is essentially on anyone who runs a node. My daughter's birthday is in your hard drive right now. My wedding day is in your hard drive right now, and it's going to be there for the rest of eternity as long as Bitcoin exists. So it's so awesome.
Now I will emphasize, it's optionally in your hard drive, because op return is a voluntary piece of data that nodes can prune. So if this ever becomes absolutely unbearable for nodes, and I mean we're talking about fractions of or very small amount of data, folks can actually prune this. And so this is purely voluntary, doesn't go against the Bitcoin ethos. It's like hardcore toxic maximalist approved. So before you try to crucify us, look at opentimestamps.org, read the code, and engage with me on Twitter or anywhere, and tell me what's wrong with this. Because everyone that I've talked to, including the most hardcore toxic maximalists, have been using this themselves. So basically, if you want to protect yourself, if you have things that could be useful in a court of law to protect yourself, study open timestamps, use it, but then also help us. And this is our call to action here is, what I have now on my screen, if you want to share that, it's Uncle Honey Badger wants you to protect the elections with Bitcoin. Our message is November is coming up, and you don't care about democracy, but democracy cares about you. And everyone in the world is paying attention to this election. Let's not waste the opportunity to prove that Bitcoin protects democracy not only in Guatemala but in the United States. Because if we succeed, then by December we can credibly make the case that Bitcoin protects democracy, and if you're against democracy, you're against Bitcoin. And I think that reaches a different type of audience that, for whatever reason, is still insisting that voting one way or another is incorrect. And maybe this helps to reach people with the message that, well, if we had a party that's demanded truth, then maybe we could consider that. But how has this been received in the state? And for anyone, I'll give a little bit of context, right? So the way that elections work in the U.S. is each individual state runs their own election, right? It's not thank God it's not centralized. So it's a decentralized system, and then the states kind of tabulate it. The governor gives the final stamp of approval, and it's essentially like there's like 50 countries running their own elections. That's basically the way that the system functions. How has the reception been in the U.S.? And I gotta say, Carlos, have you considered security guards? I'm telling you, bro, this is first of all, this is incredible. It was effective. I know that for the first time, the opposition won an election in a very long time in Guatemala. I joke around about how, this is a danger to democracy, but it depends how you define democracy, right? Depending on where you stand, this could potentially be, quite damning if you're trying to convince people. I'm just going to talk about the Venezuelan election because that's fair. It could be potentially dude, if you tried to roll this out in Venezuela, I would be concerned for your safety type of thing. Right. I appreciate that. I would say, tell the opposition in Venezuela about it because, it's open source, so anyone can do this. I'm seeing in the chat, folks are asking how to help us. Go to simpleproof.com, reach out to us. I'm on Twitter as Carlos Torriello. We're on Nostr as well as Simple Proof. And basically, you said that the states run their own vote. That's true, but it's actually even more decentralized more often than not. Some states control the voting system, in a more centralized manner, but a fair amount of the states actually empower the local counties. And so depending on where you live, it might be that your local county clerk is the one responsible for your records. And what are the odds that person loves his democracy and is trying to protect it against them, Russians and them Koreans? And this is just a very powerful tool that is actually cheap and quick to use. In our case, we were contracted 4 days prior to the election, happening in Guatemala, and we still had time to implement this. So we don't require changing anything that they're doing because it's purely just what's the data that is going to be spit out at the local level and protect that. Before you roll it up to the state and the governor for him to stamp, you could have your local county use this to timestamp absolutely everything so that your people in your community are comfortable and can use Bitcoin to prove to yourselves with mathematics that the data that you turned over is the same. And if anyone messes with it after the fact, you can prove that they did it, right? So our message is reach out. We're organizing screenings of our documentary film. We've had several, just yesterday, Portland, last week, Chicago and Tampa Bay. Basically, we're inviting Bitcoin meetups to have a screening, have me on for Q&A so that we can go down the rabbit hole. And whoever gets our technology in use first, we will send a documentary film crew in November around election day to document this because it'll be historic. And you can basically etch your name in history as the Bitcoiners that got Bitcoin into the voting system of the United States. And now democracy is protected by Bitcoin.
100%, man. And that's exactly why I say that eventually Bitcoin will be a danger to democracy.
I just want to reiterate the message that voting works exactly as designed. Trust the votes. There was no manipulation in the elections. We are voting maxis here.
Yeah.
Don't do this for democracy. Do this for Bitcoin. And it's your election system produces data. There's no reason to not protect that data with something that anyone can verify for themselves.
extremist. But yeah, man, this is crazy that you essentially have discovered a way to, in all seriousness, I've been making little jokes. If you guys are not
it's called sarcasm. We're sarcastic.
If you guys are not understanding the message I'm trying to transmit. But no, in all seriousness, dude, like, it's fascinating that you have found a way to use a transparent ledger that is audible by anyone to ensure the actual transparency, integrity of elections in Guatemala. I'm going to leave the U.S. out of this discussion.
American elections work exactly as designed. Go vote.
And, I think that this, if implemented, and you know what's really interesting about this, and we actually said this in the beginning of the show, which is like Bitcoin has a way of exposing incentives. I'd be curious to see who would be against this. I would just be very curious. What would be a good argument against this is my question. Right.
So I spoke at Nashville, and the best argument is you can't afford it. And Guatemala is a rich country, right? That's basically what it comes down to. I would be surprised if Guatemala, which doesn't have the money printer, could afford something like this. When the election authorities asked us, how much does it cost? Their response was, I can't believe it's that cheap. And so it depends on your system design and what your local authority is doing. But we don't want to change anything about the voting system. It's purely a matter of whatever data is produced, we can empower local citizens to verify it for themselves in case some unforeseen event could affect the data. For example, if we're very unlucky and CrowdStrike decides to run another erroneous update on election night, like, how are people protecting against that? It just happened a few weeks ago. If you need to reboot your system after a CrowdStrike blue screen of death, how will you prove to people that the data you are rebooting is exactly the same as what you were handling earlier? It would be very unfortunate if your local county clerk and the folks that are in charge of your local election are in a position where they can't prove even to themselves that their data is theirs. And this is just a very simple, fast way to do this. And in Guatemala, now, the president-elect, his executive office, people in Congress, judges, now understand that Bitcoin is useful and that there's this ability to use it to protect public records. So it makes it a lot easier to talk about the importance of miners protecting, the network, because we can borrow some of that and use it to protect our democracy. So, thank you to the miners. Thank you to the coin joins. And let's keep studying Bitcoin.
Absolutely, man. Dude, first of all, great work, incredible work. This is just another kind of example of how Bitcoin truly fixes the world, and it's fascinating to see. Is this a perfect solution? No, but it does empower you if you use it properly to ensure the actual integrity of elections. And all the power to you, Carlos. And man, you have discovered something that is definitely very powerful. Anyways, I want to thank you for coming on, guys. This was August 14, 2024, Simply Bitcoin Live. I'm your host, Nico. My co-host for today is Optimus Fields, and our guest, Carlos. Go check out simpleproof.com for more information, how to use Bitcoin to ensure an immutable democracy. Guys, if you guys enjoyed the show, smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. And we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Episode was brought to you by bitcoinwell.com, on a mission to enable independence.